Especially Cameron.
I was talking to you up
I
there.
behaved myself on that last thing. How much did I didn't talk.
I missed the first part.
Are we
so-
good? All right. Call the meeting to order. Those that care to, please stand for an opening prayer and pledge of allegiance. Mr. Cameron?
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day. Thank you for this community, and thank you for all that you do for us. I just pray, Lord God, tonight that you would just guide and direct us in all that we do and say as we take up the challenges and issues that we deal with in the city. And just again, thank you for your blessing on this city. In Jesus' name, amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, good evening. Thank you for being here. It's been a minute since I've been here. We were gone last time and
Yes.
missed some excitement, but I'm happy to report that 7th grade school ball is over for my oldest boy. Finished 12-4, so I know you were all anxiously waiting to know about that. Finished 3rd in the COC, and now we're on to travel ball and wrestling. So, now that I've updated you on my personal life, we'll go on to citizen participation. I'd like to open it up to anyone here wanting to speak to something not on the agenda tonight. If it's on the agenda, there will be a time for that, but if there's somebody here wanting to speak to something not on the agenda, please approach the podium. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak. Seeing none, we will move on to the consent agenda. There are 2 items on our consent agenda. I'd welcome any questions or comments from council.
Mr. Mayor,
Sir.
I had just a general question. I meant to get this out before council, but I was just curious, why was this resolution in the consent agenda instead of the regular agenda?
So this is item number 2.
Item number 2 is one I'm referencing.
24-R-04. Mr. Cameron, could you update us on that issue? Oh, sorry, Mr. Keeling. I didn't see you jump up. I need to put my glasses back on.
So the resolution in question is for fireworks. We have been using Gateway for the last 3 years, tremendously impressed by their level and quality of service. We went out for a formal RFQ, had 3 firms reply, which is a really good turnout. Once again, we chose Gateway, so really kind of a repetitive nature thing. We've been in agreement with them for the last 3 years, and we're hoping that this agreement would last additional 3 years. So
Sure.
felt the need to just put it on in the consent agenda.
In the consent. And I didn't see anything wrong with it. It's just every year I get asked that question, how much we spend, and so I just wanted to make sure that, in case I was asked later.
So the NTE amount, can you help me out with that?
It's like
I believe it's
30.
It's 34,000
34.
for 2024, and then not to exceed 38,000 for the next 2 years if we should renew with them.
Sure. Thank you.
Any other questions on that issue? Or any other? Thank you, Mr. Keeling. Seeing no other questions, I need a motion and a second for the approval of the consent agenda.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
1.
Thank you. The consent agenda passes by a vote of 7-0 to 1. Moving on to boards, commissions, and committee schedules, we have a planning and zoning meeting for February 12th, 2024. City council meetings are scheduled for February 20th and March 5th of 2024, and the Board of Adjustments meeting is March 7th, 2024. Moving on to old business and tabled items, this is item number 3 on our agenda. I need a motion and a second for the second reading of Bill 24-05 by title only, please.
Motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries by a vote of 8-0. Madam Clerk.
An ordinance of the City Council amending Title III, Chapter 300, Section 300.020, definitions, and adding new Section 340.125, golf carts and utility task vehicles to Title III, Chapter 340 of the Municipal Code of the City of Republic, Missouri.
Thank you, ma'am. Do we have any updates from staff?
No updates from the police department. I've talked to the council members for the last couple of weeks. They might have a motion to change something.
Okay, so no updates from police staff. Are there any issues that the council would like to discuss?
Mr. Mayor.
Sir.
As Sergeant Richards mentioned, I spoke with him over the past week or so, spoke with our legal counsel, and there's a few things with this. We had citizens concerned, kind of looking into it. I understand the police's purpose behind this, the importance of them being able to make sure that these vehicles are being used in a safe way on our streets. They're technically not street legal vehicles. They're not intended to be on the streets. But with that, we also have many citizens who have them. They use them to get to the pools. They use them responsibly and legally. So, if we give them that ability. And so I understand kind of both sides of that coin. And so with that, I'm going to have a motion for amendments. But the reasons kind of behind those are, I was talking to, again, the sergeant about the reason for the registration. It kind of gives the police the opportunity to contact citizens that may not have that. There's going to be a learning curve behind this because obviously no one's going to be in compliance when it first exists. This allows them to stop and talk to them. And then eventually, if somebody doesn't have that registration, it kind of makes sense that they would have a reason to contact and do that. It also allows the police then to determine who the owner of that is. If it's an underage kid that's out driving it, they might not want to say who their mom and dad are, but that little registration sticker on the back is going to tell them who to go talk to about the fact that they're underage kids out here driving this vehicle. The parts I had a little more trouble with were things like the insurance. Some people it's covered by homeowners. Depending on the company, low-speed vehicles aren't covered on streets, that kind of thing. It becomes kind of a gray, weird area. And so expecting our police officers to be able to navigate that while trying to do their job becomes a little tough. And it also puts, I think, a burden on the citizens who are trying to use these vehicles and comply with what we want them to do, but then we're making them keep an insurance that may or may not actually cover them and do anything in the event of an accident. Along that same lines would be seatbelts. There are vehicles, UTVs especially, that come with seatbelts, and that makes sense, but a lot of golf carts, and we do have a golf course in the city, and people are using those golf carts to go play golf. Those don't come with seatbelts. They're not made to have seatbelts. If the vehicle has them to begin with, I understand requiring that to be used if it's going to be on the street, but I don't see us making someone retrofit a seatbelt, because then we get into what defines a seatbelt. If they put a piece of rope under the seat and tie it, is that a seatbelt? And if it is, what's that actually doing for anybody? And then finally, the prohibited streets section, that one kind of struck me as weird because I could see people wanting to go to, the public pool or that kind of thing. But again, as I kind of talked about at the beginning of this, these aren't meant to be on the streets. We don't want people running around the entire city on a golf cart or a UTV. And so that's the reason they've restricted those main thoroughfares, is it kind of keeps people into their subdivisions. Is that's the main idea behind this law, would be people can use them in their subdivision to go to the pool, go to those common areas, but not necessarily take it out and drive around the city in it, because that's not the intended purpose. So with that, I would like to make a motion to amend ordinance 2505.
So you're proposing an amendment?
Correct. 5 amendments to this ordinance.
Do we have those specific 5 amendments listed?
We do, and I think probably, since there are citizens, I think, in the audience, and then just for the record, I think probably best for a council member to articulate those for the record. And in front of each one of you is a redlined, a marked up version of the ordinance that align with the proposals that council member Neal plans to propose.
So just assuming everybody doesn't have their Robert's Rules of Order right in front of them, this is how this is going to work. So we are attempting to change the ordinance by motion. That is what Councilmember Neal is trying to do. He's going to list his proposed changes. The council will then have the option to second it. And then if there's a motion and a second, we will vote to amend it. You can vote to amend it based on what Councilmember Neal says, or you can not vote to amendment, and then we will go back to the original writing of it, and we can vote on that if Mr. Neal's proposal does not go forward. Did I explain that correctly?
You did.
Are there any questions about where we're at procedurally? All right, seeing none, Mr. Neal, would you please list specifically what you are proposing to amend, and then we will see if there is a second to your proposal.
Okay. Specifically, I would move to 1, strike out paragraph A9 of section 340.125. I would strike out, number 2, I would strike out the words valid proof of insurance and from the 7th line of section 340.125, paragraph D. Number 3, I would strike out the word registered from the last line of section 340.125, paragraph D. Number 4, I would strike out the words the operator and all passengers of a golf cart or UTV shall be restrained by seat/safety belts and shall remain seated from section 340.125, paragraph A7. And 5th and finally, I would insert the words, if the golf cart or UTV is equipped with original manufacturer installed seat belts, occupants shall be restrained by the original manufacturer installed seat belts for their respective seat, if one, at all times, at the beginning of section 340.125, paragraph A7.
And if I'm understanding you correctly, you are proposing these amendments so that you can both meet the needs of the police here in Republic, but also address some of the concerns citizens raise.
That is my intention, yes.
We do have a motion on this ordinance in front of the council.
So just a point of order, because there are 5 different amendments, I believe that's 5 different motions. I don't believe you can do them all in one, because if they don't agree, if there's one part that is not agreed to, they have, this body would have to agree to each one. So I do believe that would have to, each one of those you read, I'd make a motion. I would, my 2 cents, because the council's gonna have to decide, and then you would also open that to anyone else that has an amendment that they would like to make in addition to that. So I think there would have to be a motion and a second. And I just want to clarify this, if this is correct, because I believe each one requires a motion, a second, and a vote before it can be amended.
So you're correct. He can break it down into separate if he wants to do all 5. Also correct, if somebody wants to propose essentially an amendment to what he's proposing, they can make a secondary motion to amend that. But beyond that, there can't be a third. So we can kind of go back and forth that way, and he can take them 5 individually or 5 at one time. They're all germane to the general topic of the amendments. So that's sort of a matter of preference. If you want to do it that way to be more clean, that's also perfectly fine.
So, Mr. Mayor, with that consideration, I think then we're spot on to go forward with that. If that conversation begins to turn into that, it's either, we'll just have to see how the conversation goes with that movement.
So here's what I'm going to propose. We have a motion of all 5 in front of council right now.
Go for it, yep.
And is there a second to that motion for all 5 of Councilmember Neal's proposed amendment? Is there a second?
Question.
Yes, sir.
On the new ordinance, doesn't it eliminate insurance
It does.
and seatbelts?
It does. If the amendment is granted, and then we vote on it, and the new ordinance as amended goes into effect, the answer to that question is yes. Gary, it didn't look like I answered your question.
Mr. Mayor,
Please.
the red line that's in front of everyone includes what I'm proposing. It's what I just read out as my 5 points. That's what the red in the amended document is.
So it eliminates insurance and it eliminates seatbelts.
Correct. From vehicles that did not originally have seatbelts. If it originally came with a seatbelt, it will still be required.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So if we are allowing golf carts on our roads and don't allow insurance, does that in any way make the city liable?
That's a question for Megan.
So that's a loaded question. I think very, very, very generally speaking, no, absent some sort of extraordinary circumstances. It's a good question, and I actually had the same discussion with Councilmember Neal at some point before this. But generally speaking, no, that is not really a concern that I would have.
All right.
I have one more.
Yes, sir.
I talked to an insurance agent, and his company on golf carts and UTVs, as long as they're on the owner's property, they're covered. But on his insurance company, the minute they're on the street, they require a separate insurance policy. That's the one insurance company I talked to.
And they may be uninsured if they're on the streets, but that's on the individual.
Right.
So
It'll come out of their pocket.
we've got a motion. Is there a second?
I will second it.
All right, we've got a motion and a second to amend.
Hold on.
Sorry.
That's okay. This one goes with this. He didn't read it into the record yet because it's actually on here. So we just need to read each one. Strike this, not this.
Yes.
This one, let the public speak about the amendment. We allow them to speak on this. Okay.
All right,
Okay.
so we have a motion and a second, but legal counsel says there needs to be one clarification.
One clarification, and this was my fault. I apologize, Councilmember Neal. This is related to the third motion, essentially, the third part of his motion that he made, specifically to strike out the word registered. There is an additional related proposed amendment to that topic that I apologize, I forgot to include in this. However, it is in your red line. And you can see it on page 5. It is in paragraph B1E. And you'll see at the bottom of the page, the motion to amend, if the council member wants to make this motion to amend, would essentially be a motion to substitute. It would be to strike out that second sentence that's showed and stricken, and then it would be a motion to substitute that with the first sentence that is proposed to be added, again, to B1E. And that is related to striking out of the word registered.
So we have a motion and a second on the red-lined amendment.
To be clear,
Yes, sir.
does that mean the police won't inspect them?
Yeah, so we're not voting on the ordinance. We are voting to amend it to what this is, and then we will vote on whether or not we pass this ordinance. So right now, we're just talking about whether or not we're going to do Mr. Neal's amendment.
Okay.
So we have a motion and a second. We will now take a roll call vote. And I think it, voice vote? Okay.
Councilmember Updike?
No.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Gerlich?
Aye.
Councilmember Franklin?
Aye.
Councilmember Fields?
Aye.
Councilmember Gerke?
Aye.
Councilmember Neal?
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell?
Aye.
All right. So we now have an amended ordinance in front of this council that we need to talk about. Okay? So Mr. Neal's changes have been made, and that is now what's in front of our board to decide whether or not we want to pass. So now we would take a motion and a second to pass the amended ordinance of 24-05.
Mr. Mayor,
Unless anybody else wants to make an amendment.
Yeah, unless anybody else wants to make an amendment.
can we still, questions?
Yes.
Still. I was just curious on the enforcement part, the fine, the $200 to $450 per violation. I was just curious of how we came to that number specifically.
Mr. Mayor?
Please.
So that is consistent with our non-traffic ordinance violations penalty fine schemes. It is also consistent with the authorization that we have in our general penalties section, which is 122.20.
So that's the same for like driving without a license.
That's correct, and it's also consistent with the state code provisions where it provides for a stepped-up scale. So first offense, second offense, third offense, and that generally starts with 250. It goes all the way to 450 or 500, depending.
So
But that's just generally
wouldn't necessarily be
consistent with that.
$450 for the first violation.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. No, it would not.
Thank you.
I have a question as well. if
Yes,
that's
sir.
all right. And it's probably, Jared, this is probably for you. How much drive-up golf cart business is the pool doing now? I mean, is that something we need?
I wish I had him here, but I would not want to overstate, but I would say 0.
Yeah, okay. So like less than one?
Yeah, less than
Okay.
1.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to.
Mr. Wilson, I did not want to not answer your question. I just didn't want to lose my place. So you had a specific question about registration.
Right.
So I am looking at the amended ordinance on page 7, and the registered part has been stricken through. Go ahead.
If I can clarify, Mr. Mayor, the reasoning for striking out the word registered is actually quite simple, really. It was just to avoid confusion for citizens so that they would know we are not referring to state vehicle registration. Because under the state law, I think we might have covered this last time, these golf carts, they are not required to be registered as a vehicle with the Department of Revenue. That's the only reason for that change. It was duplicative and somewhat confusing.
So
what it was.
the police will still have to inspect them, and if they pass, give them a tag to put on the back of their vehicle.
No, and I might ask you to clarify what you mean by inspect. Just a generic version of inspection, no.
On the original, it said that the police had to inspect them, and if they passed inspection, they issued them a tag for $15 to put on the back of their golf cart or UTV.
Inspection.
Originally, it was, they would come up, provide the proof of insurance and a valid driver's license, and we would just confirm that they had that, and then we'd issue their permit. Now they just have to come up with a valid driver's license and the information on their golf cart or side by side, and then we issue that permit.
$15.
$15.
Okay. So you're good to go then.
Mr. Mayor.
And that fee is mandated by Department of Revenue.
And that is addressed on page 6, and that would be that would be subsection D, special use permit, and that's where it's talking about the $15.
And the very last line of that mentions the basically sticker being available for inspection upon request. It's not talking about inspection of the golf cart. It's saying that the police can request to see your permit if they've made contact.
That's only for use on the road. I mean, I'm driving around a sidewalk or on the golf course.
allowed to drive on the sidewalk.
Wouldn't be able to drive on the sidewalk. I can't drive on the sidewalk, I can't drive on the road, I can drive on my grass, I can drive on the golf course.
So, sir, I appreciate I appreciate your point. Not citizen participation at this point. Thank you, sir. So, we have an ordinance that has been amended by Mr. Neal in front of council now. So, I would entertain a motion and a second for final passage.
I'm sorry.
No, it's quite all right. Thanks for getting my
One more
attention.
question and I'll stop. I had a question for Sergeant Richards, actually. I was just curious, as amended, does this still kind of address that original intention of this ordinance and be able to address the problems as they arise?
Yes, I believe so.
It still is effective and
I mean, I would have concerns like everybody else about not having insurance.
Sure.
but
Thank
the
you.
rest of it-
Thank you.
Any other questions? I don't want to cut anybody off. I would entertain a motion and a second for final passage of Bill 24-05.
Motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second. We will now do a roll call vote. On our computers? Or voice vote?
Is it working for you?
Mine is.
Yeah.
All right, we'll do it on our computers.
Mine is not.
Read them.
Let's just do it.
Give me a second. I got it.
All right. Councilmember Campbell.
Aye.
Councilmember Neal.
Aye.
Councilmember Gerke.
Aye.
Councilmember Fields.
Aye.
Councilmember Franklin.
Aye.
Councilmember Gerlich.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson.
Aye.
Councilmember Updike.
Aye.
Thank you. Ordinance passes as amended by a vote of 8-0. Moving on to item number 4 on our agenda. This is 24-06. I need a motion and a second for the second reading of Bill 24-06 by title only, please.
Motion.
Second.
Laura, did you get that? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries by a vote of 8-0. Madam Clerk.
An ordinance of the City Council authorizing the city to participate in the Missouri Firefighters Critical Illness Trust and Pool and authorizing the city administrator to execute the necessary documentation to secure the city's participation.
Thank you, ma'am. Any updates from staff? Any questions, comments, or discussion by council? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion and a second for the final passage of Bill 24-06, please.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We will now take a roll call vote.
Computers.
Computers. Ordinance passes by a vote of 8-0. I was reading the next thing. We have 28 council members. Moving on to new business. This is 24-07. I would entertain a motion and a second for the first reading of 24-07 by title only, please.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries by a vote of 8-0. Madam Clerk.
An ordinance of the City Council authorizing execution of a third supplemental STP urban program agreement with the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission for additional extension of the Schuler Creek Trail.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening. Karen Haynes, Planning and Development Manager. Tonight, the Builds Department is requesting authorization for the execution of a third supplemental agreement. This is for the Schuler Creek Trail Extension Project. This third agreement with MoDOT allows the city to accept a new TAP fund grant in the amount of $1,078,749, and this is specifically geared towards the construction of the trail itself. MoDOT does require the agreement to be approved by ordinance of the local jurisdiction prior to the distribution of funds or start of construction. Staff has reviewed the potential acceptance of this grant. We are asking for approval.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions from council on this issue?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Franklin.
So, along with the timeline of this, does this mean that construction begins after this ordinance is approved? Or if this ordinance is approved?
We hope to begin soon. Just kind of a very quick overview. We do have a couple of properties that we are still working on acquisitions. We just received final plans today. We do have to review that along with MoDOT, and then we do plan to move forward with bidding for the actual construction.
Okay.
So we'll be bringing something else before you, hopefully in the next couple of months.
Okay.
Mr. Franklin, I don't think she answered your question.
In a roundabout way.
All right, she got there?
Yeah.
It was well done.
I had other things stirring around.
very
They came
soon.
together, yeah.
Any other questions from council on this issue? Seeing none, please remember this is a first read, so if you have questions, get with staff. Maybe they'll answer them, maybe they won't. I'm sorry, Karen. I'm totally teasing. I'm going to be in so much trouble. Item number 6, I would entertain a motion and a second for this first reading of Bill 24-08 by title only, please.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries by a vote of 8-0. Madam Clerk.
An ordinance of the City Council amending Title 8, Chapter 805, Section 805.100, Utility Administration of the Municipal Code of the City of Republic, Missouri.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Andrew Nelson, Assistant City Administrator. This ordinance would enact the rates necessary for us to continue to pursue SRF funding. I would reference the televised video that we did this evening for residents and those that are interested in more detail what's going on. But essentially, we've approached the phase 2, the final phase of our compliance projects, our capital improvements for the wastewater system. The SRF loan that we're pursuing in the amount of $50 million, part of the process of the SRF loan is to show that we've approved the rates to be implemented through the end of the construction project, which would be 2027. So the rates proposed tonight, no actual implementation of a rate change until January 1 of 2025, with subsequent rate increases in the following 4 years. The other part I want to remind is that we evaluate these rates on an annual basis. So even though that we're approving a structure for 5 years, the purpose behind that is to demonstrate to DNR that we've implemented a structure necessary in current environment to fund the debt service. So as we continue to grow, as revenue increases, as potentially the city identifies additional funding sources, those rate could be then adjusted in those subsequent.
Questions from council on this issue? Well, Andrew, I want to congratulate you on the 7th council workshop since 2020. And I appreciate the 7th one. Go back and watch it. It was 45 minutes. He was very concise. And all the council action and discussion that we've had. You've created this very large demonstrative exhibit, and I appreciate that. I appreciate also the fact that you continue to keep us up to date, involved, and knowledgeable about this subject.
I won't promise that we won't talk about wastewater again, but this is definitely the biggest step.
If I were going to have another child, I might name him Wastewater. So it's all I think about. I appreciate it. Thank you. And any other questions before we let him sit back down and let him rest after that presentation? Seeing none, thank you, sir. All right, where are we at? What? 7? Item 7? So resolutions. Thank you. Handy to have a lawyer around. All right, this is item number 7. This is 24-R-05, a resolution of the City Council awarding the bid for portable restroom services for calendar years 2024 and 2025 to BWI Sanitation. I need a motion and a second to take up resolution 24-R-05, please.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Good evening.
Good evening. Carson Forbes, Recreation Superintendent. The Parks and Recreation Department has accepted bids for portable restroom services for the years 2024 and 2025. So these services are primarily used for departmental special events out at athletics practice fields and game fields, and then with additional units placed within some of our city parks. All bids were posted to DemandStar, and companies were notified of the posting. Ultimately, we did receive a bid from BWI Sanitation to provide the services that were outlined in that bid document. Our department has worked with BWI in the past. We have had nothing but positive experiences with them, and we've been pleased with their professionalism and the services that they've provided. So with that, staff is recommending approval. I'm happy to answer any questions.
How long was the proposal on DemandStar? Is that something that was up for a day, a week, a month?
It's up for 2 weeks.
Okay. Is that a normal amount of time to put that sort of bid up?
I do believe so.
Very good. Do we have any other submissions for services?
We did not. So the only submission that we received was from BWI.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, discussion? Seeing none, and this is a resolution, I can call it immediately for a vote, which is what I will do. All those in favor of 24-R-05, please vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstention.
Resolution passes by a vote of 7-0 to 1. Good work. She can breathe now.
Good job, Carson.
Well done. Good work. Sorry to ask questions. I was curious. All right, item number 8. This is 24-R-06, a resolution of the City Council awarding the bid for specified construction projects for the Parks and Recreation Department to Westport Construction Co. I need a motion and a second to take up resolution 24-R-06, please.
Motion.
Second.
We have 2 motions and 2 seconds. Good? Excellent. Hey, good evening.
Thank you, Mayor. Jared Keeling, Assistant City Administrator, Parks and Recreation Director. I can't remember if all the council members were here presently when we covered this in, I think it was Q3 of 2023, but I wanted to just go over basically the locations of these 2 projects. You'll see by the red circle, for those of you who've been here for a while, that was the former location of the Saddle Club, but that was an outbuilding to service the Saddle Club. It did formerly house restrooms and the concession stand, and in the orange circle there obviously is the existing what was the Republic Aquatic Center front entry. We're proposing modifications to that. So as you can see, there's a lot going on in the picture as we're aware of the construction of the Rush, but also note the tennis courts and the pickleball courts. That's a project that's coming too. We hope to have those open by July 1st of this year. So all of these projects are really kind of dominoes that happen to happen before one another, but those restroom facility will ultimately service the new tennis and pickleball courts, the new disc golf course, and trail users that are obviously frequently walk Miller Park Trail. So we've solicited bids with a base bid, and the base bid was inclusive of the restrooms and the renovations to the Republic Aquatic Center bathhouse, and we had an alternate bid for community center offices. But starting here, I joke about this with Buxton Cubic Dot all the time. So they were the architects on this project, and they also did Convoy of Hope. So I'm like, which one was bigger? Hey, like this one or Convoy of Hope? So, but I can say this: Miller Park has needed restrooms for a long time, especially for our trail walkers. So proud to bring this about. I know it doesn't look like much now. It'll look significantly better than that when completed. But just the service that'll be out there for our citizens, tremendously excited to bring that about. And then our existing aquatic center, this is our main entryway, and this will remain our main entryway. But as you can imagine, we're anticipating doubling attendance in 2024 and beyond. So in order to better financial security, in order to better our general operations, we're making augmentations. We're really going to take out that entire kiosk thing, just demo it out. And that room just beyond the kiosk there where you can see the window, that will become our main ticketing and admission center. It's really hard to see, but the plans are over there on your right. But we're going to add another service window immediately to the side of the one seen there and another one on the side. All admissions, all ticketing, all everything will now be housed indoor. All credit card purchases, all cash handling, everything that you imagine in a secure spot. So we're tremendously excited about that. And then if I can get this bad boy to work here. So it doesn't look like much, but that little doorway right there is a game changer for us. So what that will allow us to do, right there, microphone, is take our front desk workers and our concession workers and cross-utilize them. So as you can imagine, the pool opens at noon, and from 11:45 to 12:30, our front desk workers are slammed. I mean slammed, which is a good thing for us. But after that, it kind of calms down a little bit, and then what happens? The concession operations really picks up. So sounds like a little thing, one door, but that one door will allow us to cross-utilize 5 employees. So we're really happy about that to bring that about. We got good competitive bids here. 3 bids were received for these 2 projects. We ultimately are going to recommend the bid award to Westport Construction. Personally, I have not done business with Westport Construction in the past. We did ask our architects for references. They had done business with them in the past. All those references came back good. So we are recommending the base bid to Westport Construction in the amount of $254,000. I did want to reference the alternate real quick. We did want to gather prices for additional office space just for our recreation staff member at Parks and Recreation. I would be lying to tell you that we weren't busting at the seams, but we did find an alternate location for them. If you're familiar with our activities building, which is next door to the community center, there was an upstairs room that we really transformed into an office space, and we're fine there. We really are good there. I asked staff at least 3 times, I'm like, are you sure we're good there? All of them have said it's actually really, really nice. So we are going to forego the ask of the alternate. One of our staff members said it best, and I really value this from one of our staff members. They said we'd rather put our money in public-facing things rather than invest it in our offices. So that meant a lot to me. So our recommendation is our base bid for Westport Construction in the amount of $254,000.
Questions from council on this resolution issue? If this were approved, what sort of time frame? I know you said it was dominoes, but
yeah. So that was part of the overall bid package. We requested, we had to have it done by opening of the rush, right? So we requested specifically put when their completion dates is for each project. For Westport, which is another reason for going for them, the portions of the rush project they're going to have done by April 25th. We were very impressed with that. It allows us a month to train, which we were awesome and we're pleasantly surprised. And then the other one for the restrooms, they're going to be complete by May the 20th.
Okay.
You want to go back a slide just to make you all aware, and we are going to bring this before council relatively quickly, but those tennis courts and those pickleball courts, had a lot of questions about those. It is our goal to have those done by July 1, and the reason we have to have those done by July 1 is we start Martin on July 1. So there are a lot of dominoes here, but you're looking at the brains of our operation there that are making all these things happen, and we're so excited to bring all these about, but they are one after the other. They all follow one after the other. So was there another question?
He took it right out of my head. Yeah, perfect.
All right. We'll see no other questions, and as this is a resolution, we will call it immediately for a vote. All those in favor of 24-R-06, please vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Resolution passes by a vote of 8-0.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Reports from staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jared, what I'm going to do for you is what you didn't say out loud. And so the reason why that base bid or the additional office space is not included is it's either cut into, the request was to go into the general fund and get additional funding, cut the budget, find ways to do that. And the reason why, as you see in tonight's agenda, there's $150 million, there's $50 million short. And so everything that we have to consider, as Bob stood up here in this budget last time, Jared and his staff have taken one, like they are busting at the seams. A lot of places are doing that, but the overall direction and things that we're working on, they're having to consider not just themselves, but I appreciate how where they've taken their money and where they've putting it. But I want to make sure that's noted. And as our budget, as we've talked about today, we'll continue to evaluate it with the staff. If we evaluate our budget to all you in the Parks Department, But until we know what happens with the wastewater funding, and that's not going to be till June as we continue to work through the legislative session, I just want to make sure, because I know Jared wasn't going to say it in his comments, so I'm going to say it for him, that it's like he had to make a decision, but at the same time, there's a lot more writing on it because he sees what it's affecting our citizens as a whole and those rates. And if there's money and there's a way to set aside that, it's not just for the Parks Department, it was for the city too and for the citizens. And so I appreciate that. And I just want to, I mean, that's just the team that we have and their willingness to sacrifice it. Andrew, great job. You did a fantastic job putting this stuff together. Mary, you asked us, I think it was 2 years ago, what kept us up at night. And this, the answer was this wastewater plant. I think that looking at, if you saw, and I'm like the mayor, I would encourage everyone to watch that video. But the one thing that I would draw conclusion from is to go back and really look at the history of the city. Councilmember Updike, you asked a question about potentially moving where the plant was. I think it's very telling that back in the late 90s, the citizens voted not to build it on the south side of town. And I think the question is to keep that plant, I don't know if people understood in that decision that was made how much money was invested in this project that actually had to facilitate putting it on that side of town. So in this project, there's probably 30 or 40 million just to keep the update of that original $3 million increase. It's probably closer to 30 million today. And so I think that, not blaming the past, but building on what it is, but we cannot have a non-compliance issue from 1994 to 2024 and kick the can down the road. We have provided a 25-year solution. Every 5 years, you get a permit, it renews, the chances of that changing. We believe, and between staff, Burns and Mac, we have provided a solution that we can be proud of for you. Are we happy that it requires $150 million? But if you wait, it could cost you $250 million. And I think that's the product of what we're seeing today. We will do everything that we will continuously do to try to find a way not to borrow $50 million. I think the other thing it's important to know, what'd you tell me it was the debt service was? It's about $1 for every million. So the rate's about in the end game. So we've so far saved $50 a month that's not included, which again, you're not going to include in your presentation, but I'm going to. Because it could be substantially worse than what you've put together. But I want to thank you for the work that you've done. Carson, welcome to get up to the podium and have to speak. That's always a lot of fun. To the Parks team, Sergeant Richards, I know that it's also the first time to have to encounter changing an ordinance or working through it. To the council members that worked with council, that worked through the process to come up with meaningful amendments, thank you for working the way you did and trying to find those answers so that we can present them. I think that's the way it should be done. It was done out in front of everyone, but I appreciate how you worked collectively to find what those answers would be. Because I've also worked in governments where that involves my own office, and you get a bunch of people, then it's like you're tabling it and nothing gets done, and there's not really a win-win. I appreciate the collaboration that went into that. I will say this, that we did get our first allocation of ARPA funds for the wastewater plant of just over $10 million, which means, if you go back and watch the video, we get 70, I think it's a 70-30 match. So as we submit our invoices for all the phases we've done, so we've been able to finally get our first allocation reimbursement back from the state. I know Bob is as happy as I am because they're cutting checks out for the construction that's underway. So to see our reimbursement coming back, I do want to thank State Representative Davison and Senator Trent and Senator Huff for being involved in helping us see our funding come back to us. There's one thing I want to draw your attention to tonight. We're doing a lot of things way in advance, but we have submitted for what they call a RAISE grant, R-A-I-S-E. It was used to be called the Tiger Grant. Historically, maybe I would probably come to this council with the resolution authorizing me to proceed with submitting on the RAISE grant. However, if we are awarded the grant, it still has to come back for you to receive it anyway. And so to get, for just the sake of time and to expedite it, I just want to draw your attention to that it does encumber us to $1.3 million for MM Highway. It's about a $65 million project. I'm just going to, 65, probably 75 tomorrow, but, and as you know, funding for MM, at least the section from I-44 to James River, through the Iron Green District in those areas has been very hard to come by. So they have applied for a grant which requires a local match. So utilizing the Greene County money that we received, we have been requested to consider a $1.3 million contribution, of which I've given Andrew the authorization. However, technically, you don't want to do that normally by resolution, but since you would have to approve a vote to receive those funds, you still have the final say-so in it. It's kind of like making an offer on land contingent upon this body's approval. I do not believe it puts us in a financial position that would be nearly as devastating as the current MM funding source that they've kind of come up with. So I do believe that we're capable of the 1.3 million, even if it was from the street fund. But again, it would still be subject to this council's approval. But I feel a little bit in error if I did not bring that to your attention. Like, where did this come from and why didn't we know? We didn't say we would support 1.3 million. You're technically not doing that until if we're awarded the grant. It's a very competitive grant. I believe it's 65 million from I-44 that would improve I-44. It would also improve those bridges that cross over, because the MM would need to be widened to 5-lane bridges versus the 3-lane bridges. And that is what we're talking about. Just a quick few things I draw your attention to. The Cable America investment. I did meet with those leaders in the last few weeks of what they're looking to invest. And why this is important is because those that remember the last time a fiber operator was in our town going through, we had residents showing up, having service laterals and things of that nature. I want to commend our build staff for amending their policies or actually evolving because of those. So there will be someone a local contractor on board. I met with them, but also our staff did with their engineers and architects. So there will be someone local that will be answering those calls because there will be service interruptions. But I also want to commend Cable America for at least expanding their infrastructure, because those that have been on this council for long enough, I know my entire 8-year tenure with the city, it has probably been one of the most talked about situations that is like, why don't you all address this or fix it? I think Cable America is doing something to expand their infrastructure, as well as another vendor that we've worked with and will continue to work with as they expand their infrastructure. I'd also encourage you to read the capital report. Mr. Mayor, you asked me how things were going in the legislature.
You didn't answer that question either.
I'm going to stay above the fray and ask you. You can read all you want in the capital reports to see what's kind of going on in Jefferson City. We will continue to advocate for additional funding, obviously, to offset the cost of any rates that we receive, and we will report those out. And so, yeah, that's all I have. The rest of it, I just encourage you to read these admin reports. There's a lot of information that's helpful for not only this council, but the community as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Reports from council. Mr. Franklin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, everyone, for all the work that went into tonight's agenda. I really appreciate having that workshop and having that video to reference back to give to the public as a tool. The only other thing I'd like to say tonight is thank you for everyone for the thoughts and the prayers over the last few weeks. They've been very much needed and very much appreciated. So thank you very much, and have a great evening.
Thank you, sir. Any other reports?
Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I would like to thank the Parks and Recs for what you all do for the community. Friday night was a father-daughter dance. That happens to be my 18th or 19th one that I went to. Both of my daughters are married. They were not adopted. They were married. So I still get to take them. And I think it's really cool what y'all do. And what a full house Friday night. Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, you stole my thunder. That's a no. It's good. It's really good, because I don't come with set remarks, and I was kind of sitting up here thinking, I give myself a C- tonight, because I was just that was awkward, and there was things going on, and I was kind of down on myself. And then I thought back to something that happened today. And Jared, I was sitting at the coffee shop at the courthouse, really just getting ready for court this morning, and a buddy stopped by and said, "Hey, how's that Republic thing going?" And good. Somebody, just a random passerby, says, "I am so excited about that pool coming to the lazy river." And another person stopped, and another person started. And before, there were 9 people standing around talking about the daddy-daughter dance, the pool coming in, the ballpark coming in. I mean, I don't know how you build. How much is the pool expansion? 50? What's that? 7.4. How do you manage a $7.4 million project and still throw an amazing party for the citizens, just like it's nothing.
I would give all the credit to our staff. They are amazing.
Well, I knew you'd say that because it's true. And number two, it's really true. I mean, you guys have done an amazing job. What we're doing is awesome. So we can get up here, and I can sound a little awkward as I'm trying to quote Robert's Rules of Order. And this is a really boring book if you haven't read it. But in reality, we're doing something good. And it's not just here. It's what people are saying in a random coffee shop on a random Tuesday. And that's just awesome. So well done, staff. And thanks for letting us stumble through it up here. So that's all I've got tonight, except for we do have an executive session. No further action other than announcing adjournment by the mayor shall take place after an executive session that is scheduled as the last matter on the agenda, unless otherwise stated on the agenda or is allowed per RSMO 610.02. Tonight we are covering number 1, RSMO 610.021.1, pending and/or potential litigation, closed session, closed vote, closed record. Item number 2, RSMO 610.021.3, hiring, firing, promotion, or disciplining personnel, closed session, closed vote, closed record. And finally, number 3, RSMO 610.021.13, individually identifiable personnel records, performance ratings, or records pertaining to employees or applicants for employment, closed session, closed vote, closed record. I would entertain a motion and a second for adjournment into executive session.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Councilmember Wilson. Aye. Councilmember Franklin.
Aye.
Councilmember Fields.
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell.
Aye.
Councilmember Gerke.
Aye.
Councilmember Updike.
Aye.
Councilmember Garlick.
Aye.
Councilmember Neal.
Aye.
A vote of 8-0. We are adjourned to